Imagine stepping away from the sunlight. You descend into absolute, crushing darkness. You are standing 400 feet beneath the Earth's surface. The air is heavy, damp, and smells of ancient stone. Your flashlight flickers against the wet limestone walls. You are tracking the lair of an extinct apex predator. It was a prehistoric creature that weighed half a ton. You expect to find crushed skulls and massive claw marks. Instead, your light hits the floor. Your breath catches. Perfected, preserved in the hardened mud is a footprint. It is the pristine footprint of a 4-year-old child. What was a toddler doing at the bottom of a pitch-black abyss? How could a vulnerable human family survive in this subterranean world? And what were they running from that made this terrifying darkness feel safe? For decades, scientists believed ancient humans avoided deep caves. Without artificial light, entering these spaces was a death sentence. Yet, deep within this vertical cavern, an impossible reality is unfolding. We are discovering this mystery together. The entire narrative of human survival is about to change. Our story begins 35,000 years ago. The Earth was locked in the last glacial maximum. An abrupt, violent climate snap caused surface temperatures to plummet. The green valleys turned into wine-scoured deserts. Freezing winds whipped across the landscape. The massive mammoth herds migrated south. Vegetation died within weeks. Because resources vanished, early humans faced a brutal choice. They could follow the dying herds into open, unprotected territory, or they could seek refuge deep under the earth. But this choice came with an immediate, terrifying complication. When archaeologists first excavated the upper chambers, the initial assumption seemed clear. They found thousands of fractured animal bones. Researchers assumed a pack of cave hyenas lived here. Predators regularly dragged their prey inside these entrances. Then researchers examined the fracture marks. Something was wrong. The break patterns on the bones were perfectly linear. Megafauna teeth cannot create geometric fractures. Under multispectral analysis, researchers detected microscopic, parallel grooves. These were flint cut marks. These were the remnants of human meals. But the deeper the team excavated, the more the narrative fractured. The human presence did not stop at the cave entrance. The footprints led directly into the dark zone. Because humans moved deeper into the cave, they invaded a deadly kingdom. They walked directly into the winter dens of the giant cave bear. This beast stood 11 feet tall. It possessed jaws capable of crushing a human skull like a walnut. Therefore, humans had to adapt immediately. They engineered high-efficiency torches made of Scots pine. They mixed animal fat with beeswax to prolong the flame. They weaponized light to drive the giant bears away. But this adaptation came with a terrifying physical cost. A torch only burns as long as it has oxygen. Lighting massive fires in a closed cavern creates a silent killer. Carbon monoxide began to build up in the narrow tunnels. Oxygen levels dropped rapidly. The air became toxic. Every night, hungry children cried beside a dying fire. The cave was becoming a gilded tomb. Yet, they refused to return to the surface. For years, researchers believed this was a simple story of human resilience. They thought it was just man against nature. Then, the forensic anthropology reports came back. Scientists analyzed the specific trauma on the recovered human bones. They expected to find the jagged puncture wounds of bear teeth. They found nothing of the sort. The skulls showed clean, radiating fractures from blunt force impact. The ribs bore the distinct puncturing marks of projectile points. Every single lethal injury had been inflicted by flint blades. We thought this was a story about humans hiding from prehistoric beasts. We were wrong. The monsters they were running from were other humans. This revelation changes the meaning of everything. The 400-foot cave was not just a shelter from the weather. It was a subterranean fortress during a time of total social collapse. Imagine a small extended family group retreating down the steep shaft. Outside, a rival tribe is hunting them. The rival tribe is driven mad by hunger as the climate collapses. They want the family's remaining food stores. Because surface resources vanished, tribal warfare reached a point of absolute annihilation. Therefore, the deep cave offered a final, desperate tactical fallback. The darkness was terrifying, but the surface was lethal. In a hidden alcove near the bottom, archaeologists discovered a massive hearth. Hundreds of beautifully crafted flint tools surrounded the ashes. For a moment, it looked like a victory. It looked like a safe haven where our ancestors successfully held the line. The mystery seemed solved. The cave was an impenetrable bunker. But then geologists analyzed the hearth's charcoal layers. They found a devastating detail. The final layers of the fire did not contain wood ash. They contained the charred remnants of processed human bone marrow. They also found the burnt fragments of their own weapon shafts. They had run out of fuel. They were besieged in the dark. The very walls that were supposed to protect them became a trap. Starvation had entered the deepest chamber. The old solutions no longer worked. The environment appeared completely unbeatable. Isolation was becoming fatal. Did they turn on each other in the dark? Did human morality completely collapse at the bottom of the pit? The final piece of evidence answers the central question. It was discovered on the furthest wall of the lowest chamber. Scientists used ultra-high-resolution three-dimensional laser scanning. They revealed dozens of negative hand stencils on the stone wall. Ancient humans created these by placing a hand against the cold limestone. They blew a mixture of red ochre powder and charcoal from their mouths. The size mapping revealed a stunning truth. Multiple prints belonged to women and young children. DNA analysis showed the pigment contained salivary proteins from a single family. This was not a site of chaotic slaughter. It was a site of profound human connection. In their final, darkest hours, they did not fracture into violence. They stood together. They left their marks on the stone. They preserved their identity against the void. Remember the tiny footprint of the child from the beginning. We now see it clearly. That child was not a helpless victim dragged into a monster's den. They were walking alongside their family. They were guided by torchlight through the abyss. They moved deeper into the earth with a calculated, cooperative strategy. The genetic markers extracted from the ancient hearth sediment revealed an extraordinary epilogue. These specific survivors found an alternative exit through a lower fissure. They escaped the siege. Their lineage did not die out in the dark. In fact, their direct genetic markers still exist in modern humans today. The prehistoric monsters that ruled the Ice Age are all gone. The giant cave bears have long turned to dust, but our ancestors survived. They survived because they did not become monsters themselves. They held onto their light and their compassion. The flashlights are turned off now. The cavern returns to its natural, eternal silence. But on the dark limestone wall, the red hands remain. They are still pressed against the stone. They are still holding back the dark.